As ever with For All Mankind, there's a lot of catching up to do in the opening minutes of this season premiere. In what's quickly become one of the show's hallmarks, the episode opens with a montage of news clips strategically placed to fill you in on 8 years of alternative history. Some of the pop culture events: Woodstock '99, the rise of reality TV, chess champion Garry Kasparov taking on IBM computer Deep Blue. Hit movies Jerry Maguire and Castaway look remarkably familiar. However, beyond that, it's clear that the For All Mankind verse is diverging further and further from our own reality. Nearly 40 years after the space race began to unfold very differently back in Season 1. Since we last visited the Happy Valley Mars colony in 1995, humanity's expansion into the solar system has continued at pace. Trips to the moon are now increasingly commonplace, with plenty of job opportunities and even a hotel for the growing business of space tourism. 7 leading spacefaring powers, including the US and the Soviet Union, have established a Mars 7 agreement to help keep things cordial on the Red Planet. While private sector space pioneers Helios have unveiled an advanced new plasma propulsion technology. This cuts the travel time to Mars down to 1 or 2 months. And will undoubtedly be a narratively expedient way for the writers to negate the vast distances and timescales generally involved in space travel. It's also surprisingly sci-fi tech, for now, at least, in a show that's generally kept one foot in the real world. Back on Earth, Jimmy Stevens, David Chandler, younger son of former astronauts Gordo and Tracy, Michael Dorman and Sarah Jones, respectively, made a plea bargain after testifying against the perpetrators of the Johnson Space Center bombing. Meanwhile, ex-astronaut Ellen Wilson, former series regular Jodie Balfour, won an unexpected second term as president in 1996. So, during her term in office, she legalized same-sex marriage and subsequently married her long-term sweetheart, Pam Horton, Megan Leathers. Her running mate, George Bush Sr., fared less well than his son did in real life, losing the 2000 election to Al Gore. Former Beatle John Lennon performed a successful halftime show at Super Bowl XXXVI. It was U2 in real life, and over in the Soviet Union. Premier Mikhail Gorbachev had significant success with his new glasnost and perestroika reforms. Gore later declared the Cold War over. With the alt history revision done and dusted, the episode wastes little time reminding us where all the familiar For All Mankind faces find themselves in 2003. Series mainstay Ed Baldwin, Joel Kinnaman, is still employed by Helios and is the second in command at the thriving Martian mini-metropolis at Happy Valley. Part of the same generation of spacefarers as Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and the other Apollo astronauts, Ed is now well into his 70s. And as is the case with the other survivors from Season 1, the show's makeup department has done extensive work adding 3 decades onto the 40-something. The results are both impressive and convincing. Ed's due back on Earth in 2 months' time, and daughter Kelly, Cynthia Wu, can't wait for his return. She's busy raising space baby Alex whilst she has a difficult house guest in the form of Olga, the mother of the kid's late cosmonaut dad, Alexei. Right now, however, Ed's busy commanding the Ranger 1 spacecraft on a groundbreaking mission to haul an asteroid into Mars orbit, where it will be mined for resources that will help make Happy Valley self-sustaining. Cosmonaut Grigory Kuznetsov, Lev Gorn, the first Soviet on Mars, has the honor of taking the first ever steps on an asteroid. With the Johnson Space Center in Houston destroyed in the Season 3 finale, the impressive Mars Mission Control Center at the renamed Molly Cobb Space Center has a modern new look. It's also under new management, with Eli Hobson, Daniel Stern, now pulling the strings as the boss of NASA. Interestingly, he's a recruit from the private sector, credited with driving America's move to electric vehicles when he was CEO of Chrysler. The adoption of alternative energy sources seems set to be a major theme in this new season, as does Hobson's penchant for cost-cutting. A few feet away from him, engineer Aleida Rosales, Coral Pina, follows the action from her console, as Kuznetsov pilots his self-propelled suit towards the asteroid. Naturally, his efforts culminate with him as the focus of a beautifully composed shot of a guy standing on the horizon of a tiny, rocky world. As teased by the Season 3 finale. Former NASA head Margot Madison wakes up in a sparse Moscow apartment, her morning routine a neat echo of the old days back at JSC, albeit without her trusty piano. Living under the alias of Margaret Reynolds. She's now clearly doing her best to assimilate on the other side of the Iron Curtain. She speaks Russian with a strong American accent and keeps up with current affairs via the International Tribune. Meanwhile, Danielle Poole, Chris Marshall, the first American on Mars, has left NASA and is keeping a close eye on the family of disgraced astronaut, and Jimmy's elder brother, Danny Stevens. The episode never reveals what happened to Danny after he was banished to solitary confinement on the Martian surface, which suggests there's a big reveal to come later in the season. Whatever Danny's ultimate fate turned out to be, it still haunts Danielle. The significant new addition to the cast is Miles Dale, Toby Kebbell, an offshore oil driller who's fallen on hard times following the decline of fossil fuels. Estranged from his young family, he applies for a job extracting natural resources from the moon, but doesn't bank on the booming popularity of careers in outer space, fueled, in part, by the hit Moon Miners reality TV show. After lying about his college experience, he manages to get a placement that will start in 2 years' time, but complains that it's not soon enough. He's ultimately offered a 2-year trip to Mars, harder, longer, and further away, but with a bigger upside. Reasoning that it's the best option for his family, he accepts the position.